How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Free Kick, the AFLW Fantasy Podcast. Yet another team in our Clubs and Days review. We're now up to the Sydney Swans. And, of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Liam. How's it going?
Look, every other episode I've said, yeah, great. Less so today.
Yeah, so how's your face?
Yeah, look, it's been better. It's quite literally depressed at the moment. I was playing a bit of footy on the weekend and I broke my cheekbone in 3 places and I'm going in for surgery tomorrow.
Well, look, I'm very grateful that you still actually want to talk and record something because your face is looking a little bit worse for wear at the moment.
I can assure you that however bad it looks, it feels worse.
You just are so dedicated to the Sydney Swans episode. Will and I were like, would you like us to jump in? We can do it for you. And you were like, no, I want to talk about the Swans.
They're just filled with fantasy options. And I'm not kidding when I say they were the 2 favourite interviews I had to do all of this preseason. So I was very keen to actually be on the episode to talk about them.
Yes, well, why don't you start with giving us a team history?
Team history, it's pretty simple. They played 1 season. Last year, they didn't win a game. They were competitive in a few. They were a bit too competitive against Essendon when I went and watched them at Icon Park. They were slightly less competitive when they hit Geelong in the final game of the season. But they really did look like, even if those results towards the back end of the year didn't necessarily show it, they were a much more competitive side and looked like they were going to be close to winning a game. And at time of recording, they played a match sim over the weekend and they managed to beat Gold Coast.
That's a good sign. So I guess expansion club, we've seen clubs coming in their first year, not always smashing it to begin with. So to be expected, I suppose. We can expect a better season 8 because we've had some interesting ins.
Look, you're not kidding. The major ins are both going to feature prominently on the football field and in our fantasy teams because they've added from Collingwood, superstar, rising star, All-Australian Chloe Molloy. They've added former pick 2, Lucy McEvoy from Carlton, the mid-defender forward. And then they've also added a player that we have been fascinated by from Geelong, Laura Gardner, who has already copped about 4 or 5 mentions on this podcast to start the year from Geelong. So some pretty big ins, just a couple here and there. And then the only out of note is Molly Eastman, who's moved from Sydney back to Melbourne for study and has moved to Richmond.
Yeah, some very exciting ins there. And I think even though we've spoken about them before, we're going to talk about them some more today. First, why don't we throw over to our interview, Liam? You mentioned it was a very exciting one that you liked.
Yeah, for sure. The first interview we had was with one of, the biggest names in the game. I'm sure you've seen them on the title of this episode by now, but also just one of the most entertaining interviews I've had. And that was with Chloe Molloy back earlier in the preseason. So yeah, go and join me for that now. Welcome, everyone, to this very special interview we have for today's Sydney Swans episode. I'm joined by new Swan and former Rising Star and 2-time All-Australian Chloe Molloy. Chloe, thank you so much for joining. How are you going?
I'm good, thank you, Liam. Thanks for having me on. I'm pretty keen to get into it.
Oh, absolutely, and we're always keen to have you on. Now, I've got to start with the big question first. How are you feeling now that you're through the off-season between season 7 and the beginning of season 2023? Because it's been pretty substantial to kind of sell it short even.
Oh, that sells it so short. Yeah, I think you heard by my slight reaction just before, it was a pretty intense 2022. I've described as a character building year for me personally, just because the body had, almost wanted to throw the towel in a couple of times. And then, just honestly, every aspect of being a human was impacted. I loved it. And I actually probably wouldn't change it for the world because, a year filled with football. 1, I loved it as a player. 2, you get, sport for the fans. AFLW is all year round. That's a one-off. So that was pretty, that's pretty special to have that. But by the end of it, for me, my back was shot. I ended up having surgery, and mentally, emotionally, just because we aren't in that full-time capacity. It did, it took a bit of a toll. I'm grateful we had the year, but yeah, when that final siren went against Adelaide in that, oh my God, that game, that Storm game where we had delays after delays.
That was a pond over in Adelaide. That was actually ridiculous to watch in that quarter time break.
It was insane. Yeah, when that siren went, I was a small, tiny bit of me. Obviously, I'm a competitor, and losing absolutely hurts and sucks, and especially for it to be a final and how close we came. But yeah, and a small inch of me was relieved that it was like, okay, like, wow, I actually have some time off now to reset, rejuvenate, because the year was just full on.
Yeah, and it like that kind of leads me into my next question, which is obviously, you know, we've heard now you talk about how much you were managing pain and that back injury going through your games. I'm sure it was a relief in some ways to finish, but it surely wasn't ideal timing that you had, you know, knowing that you were probably going to have some kind of rehab on your back and going into free agency. Surely that's just more weight on an otherwise already sore back and shoulders.
Yeah, well, I probably selfishly had pushed surgery back more so because I'm a big push for, you know, I'm a human first and I needed some time off, and I didn't want to be rehabbing during summer because we hadn't had that in so long. So I had pushed it back, and yeah, it was a pretty debilitating injury. I remember walking for a coffee and I'd have to go down into like fetal position almost just to like release the tension neurally through my back and my hip. So I know every athlete has their gruesome injury, but this one kind of like took it out of me. And then to get through the season with the Collingwood medical team were absolutely so understanding. Matt Pelosi, he was fantastic in managing me through. So with the club, but yeah, there was weeks where I didn't get on the track. There was one incident where I actually had the first time I touched a footy for the week was in the warm up prior to the game, purely because that's what I had to do to get through, and this is what we do as athletes. We put our body through absolute hell, but I knew that I was going to be pushing it, and to Sydney's, in grateful for them that they still wanted me to come across for a long term deal, despite knowing that I was about that, like I had been going through surgery. And funny story, I actually signed my contract on the hospital bed after surgery for the Swannies. And Alicia Newman had just popped in that morning. So former Collingwood teammate and now current Swans teammate had came in and signed my contract whilst I was recovering from back surgery. So yeah, it was an intense kind of time, but I'm a pretty chill person. So I was headstrong on that I needed time off and wanted that time off during summer holidays and not be laying on my back dependent on someone else. So, it all kind of worked out. And, I sit here now and I'm back to full training and, put pen to paper on a long-term deal with a club that I'm super grateful to be at.
Yeah. And obviously, those of us who are playing fantasy are well aware of last year, as much as you were managing that back pain, you were playing a more substantial midfield role as well.
Yes.
And I think last season, on the back of having pretty debilitating pain, I think you had averaged your highest tackles per game in any season that you've had, which I can't imagine was particularly comfortable.
Oh, it was agonizing at times, and like getting through games and like, shout out to everyone who had me in their fantasy team and kind of stuck by me. I was going through a bit, and obviously in like the fantasy world, you don't, sometimes injuries aren't announced, so you don't really know what. So you see players performing and they can underperform. But yeah, for anyone that stuck me in their team and stuck by me, appreciate it.
You were pretty popular, kind of across both seasons last year, but I kind of want to move across to what you were just discussing, which is obviously you moved to Sydney and kind of what you've built up there. There was a recent piece you did with Gemma Bastiani that was on the AFLW website where you talked about kind of wanting to grow the game in Sydney and kind of using your personal brand and the brand that you built at Collingwood to help kind of grow it there. Was that kind of, and that's obviously you recognising that there's probably a bit of extra pressure coming across as the marquee player with the longer contract. Is that something that made it easier to sign for Sydney, knowing that you were going to put yourself in a position where you were going to hold yourself to that higher standard, or was it something that kind of made that choice more difficult?
No, to be fair, it's pretty neutral actually, Liam, only because I'm a little bit naive probably to how big of a role model or just even just the influence I have in the AFLW. I knew I have a little bit, and I'm hoping that I can use that up here in Sydney to push the game. And I've had a couple of conversations with people, and they're like, you're so gutsy, the fact that you left Collingwood to come up here. And I'm like, oh yeah, kind of just brush it off and don't think too much of it. But I know in terms of pressure, there's absolutely none. The only pressure that will form is if I put it on myself. And I think a little bit more will come in the season, come close to the season, because, the storyline will be, big name Molloy comes in, can she perform? And I understand that's going to come with it. And to be fair, I want to lean into it, and I want that sort of pressure from the media, and I love that they're invested in it. And I think that's just fair when you come over on a long-term deal to a club that didn't win a game. There is a bit of expectation, but I don't want to shy away from that. I would like to step into the spotlight, and I know that I'm not doing it by myself. We had Lucy McEvoy come over, Laura Gardner. We've got some Irish recruits coming over. So as much as, I was the headline signing, it doesn't make me any greater than any other player that we came over here. Once we get on the field, it's you couldn't care less what tier a player is on. You couldn't care less what contract they've got, how many games they've played. It kind of just is an even playing field. But when that pressure does come, I know that I've got good support around me, and I would like to say I'm pretty resilient in a sense that I've been around for a little bit now. Played for Collingwood, so you cop the
small supporter base, the
media street there.
You really Correct. Probably haven't got many eyes on you. It's a pretty sheltered community.
Exactly. But when that comes, I'll deal with it then. And I've just got to focus on getting myself right. And then hopefully, come the season, I can step into the shoes that, they want me to fill, because that's what I came up here to do.
Yeah. And, before you've kind of preempted, it's almost like you've read my questions ahead of time. I've definitely want to hear about how Lucy McEvoy and Laura Gardner are going, because they're very relevant for us fans out there to kind of see how they're going to fold in. But what we actually want to hear is, how are you looking your role? Because you mentioned earlier that you're back to training full time, and it sounds like the back recovery is going well. How has the off season gone, and kind of what do you envisage your role being in this team, given you've played basically across every line at the AFLW across your seasons at this point, and even in the last 2 seasons, you've been highly changeable between forward and midfield. What's it shaping up to be at Sydney this year and kind of going forward?
Yeah, I think even though touching on the names that you just mentioned, Laura and Lucy, between the three of us, I think we'll probably it's no secret. I played mid forward last year and proved that I could do that, and that was lucky, because, well, not lucky, that's a really bad term, but Britt and Bree were out, so I had to step into the midfield role and prove that I could play that. And then the vision, Scotty's vision for me coming over was to play a mid forward role, similar to last season. So that's kind of where I'll be looking at. And in the off season, I'm back to full training, probably just been the last week that I've just been managing loads, just getting kilometers back into legs, because we had such a long off season. But I'm training really well. The girls' skills level and knowledge and IQ of football is exceeded my expectations of where they would be at, especially coming from, established finals team to Sydney. It was, it is very different programs, but they are so much further ahead than I think they know that they're at, and then also they're much further ahead where I thought they were at. So it's been a really good pre-season. The girls, the crew before I came here had been going since December. So
pretty solid block.
It's an exciting time. Yeah, solid block is even an understatement. Early morning sessions since December. So yeah, I think it's pretty exciting to be a Swan at the moment.
And I can imagine, everyone kind of knew going into the season that they had the youngest list of the 4 expansion clubs. And so whilst unfortunate, 0 wins, that's probably a driving force as well to the training. And there's probably some expectation or belief in there as well.
Yeah, to be fair, Liam, it's actually not a driving force for them as much as maybe what externally people think. And, you put it on paper, I didn't win a game, but, were they set up for the, were they set up to win a game? We saw how quickly the teams came in. Scotty Gowans, they didn't want to. I love the way he built this list, and that was the reason why I wanted to be part of it, because I love that. They didn't rush anything. Yes, as much as they were rushed to come in. Scotty Gowans left Collingwood, a few weeks out from the end of the season to come build a list over here. So he was dedicated to the fact that he left the program to come build this. They didn't rush. They didn't get players that they wanted, but they just didn't give out hammies. Like, they didn't just go, yep, you can have a contract. You can have a contract. Come play for us. They're building for long-term success. And I know every football club is doing that and every program is, but I just love the way he just didn't give out freebies to anybody. They didn't land someone, but that's okay. We're gonna, we'll get through this season. Girls had 24 hours to decide, some of them. So it's almost like this is like the first season for the Swans. Yes, you can't disregard last season, but it's like, all right, we've got our first proper full season. Some of the girls can settle. They've got, moved into new houses. They've set up their life here, and it's like we can launch from this season, even though it's season 2 for the Swannies. I feel like this is a really good opportunity to actually prove and show to the league and to everybody else that this is what the AFLW Sydney Swans program is.
Yeah, and obviously we were following very intently kind of in the community what was going on at Sydney, and we could see that there were little pockets, even building last year, of some real talent, particularly in some of the, say, for example, the key defenders and some of the kind of outside players in the draft. You talk about big contracts, and we've both mentioned them already, but Lucy McEvoy and Laura Gardner both come in having, from different pathways, but both come in kind of as highly talented players and well regarded. How are they fitting into the team, and kind of what do you envisage their roles being in season 8?
Well, it's actually quite easy for the three of us to fit into the program. We've been welcomed really well, and I think Scotty and Kate have chosen people that do fit into the culture that the Swans are building. But big boy McEvoy, she had her shoulder issues, but she's overcome them. She looks fit. She, her knowledge of the game. I've always played against her, but never with her. And we've actually built quite a nice connection in that. We've been talking about it just coming back off the track. Just when she's got the footy, I just get excited because I'm like, oh, she's just going to hit me. She's just got the skill and the execution. And I know that she's going to make me look good. So she's absolutely flying. She's been going between mids and forwards. To be fair, the two of us have, and I think that's why Scotty brought us over, is to kind of work as a duo in a side, a big team. And Laura Gardner, I actually didn't know who she was before she came over here, but I think that is a disservice to her because she is an absolute weapon. I actually can't believe I didn't know who she was. She is her speed and she's just so fierce at the footy, and just for someone, you look at her, she's quiet, doesn't say a lot, but God, when she gets on the footy field, she's just a menace. She's absolutely everywhere. She can run. She's got aerobic capacity. She's fast, finds the ball so easily. She's a tackling machine. Yeah, and I think in saying those two things, if the fantasy people can figure out where she's going to play, I'll let them to it. But yeah, she's a gun, an absolute weapon. So she is someone that I can't believe I didn't know of. But yeah, I'm actually so glad to be on her team.
And I think part of the reason why the fantasy community is so intent on seeing her, at least the people on the pod, we've been keen on Laura playing because she had a BFLW season where she had a run of game where she averaged basically 150 points. Because she tackles, she was averaging 40 plus possessions. And watching that Geelong team, that is a stacked midfield filled with round 1 draft talent. It's a very difficult, and there's a very tight group. So it was always kind of if there was ever a chance to break in, she clearly has the talent. And having watched a couple of those VFLW games, it is evident watching her play how fast and how much attack on the ball that she has. So it is great to hear that has come through 100% in the AFLW program at Sydney. So that is about the best tidbit that you could have given us from the preseason. The other player that that I want to have a quick chat about is another midfielder, maybe comes with slightly more regard kind of nationally, which is Montana Ham. I think having watched games last year, it was pretty clear that Sydney were trialling a lot of different players in a lot of different roles. There was a game where Montana Ham was tagging Jazz Garner, which I'm sure is possibly the most difficult role kind of going around week to week.
The most difficult role, yes.
Pretty much. And then there was another game against the Bombers that I was watching and she played off halfback. What has it, like, how is she looking kind of coming in on a full preseason, not having to do schoolwork anymore? And will she be playing midfield this year?
Yeah, that was like Moni's biggest thing last year. And she's a big family person as well. And you're putting yourself out there as being so young as she is, and she's not extroverted, so it was a huge move. And then to still do year 12 amongst it, like just hearing how she got through last year and the fact that she wasn't, she didn't go to trainings with the team, but she'd like play with them. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, how did that even work? But this is just what they did. And she's a great investment, and she's someone I'll be playing alongside for a while as well. But she doesn't say much. She's really monotone. Like, she just goes about it. She's so classy, and when she's on, she's absolutely on. And I think moving, not to go on a spiel, but like moving away from family into Sydney has its challenges. So it's a bit of a roller coaster, and I've experienced that a little bit. But I'm a lot older than Mon, and probably have built up resilience just through experience. But she wants to learn. She doesn't give you much, but you can just tell that she's always listening. And she's just watching what you do. And I think she'll roll through the midfield. I think for Mon, she's just so talented, and Scotty Gowans probably just wants to find the right spot for her on the footy field. So I would like to say she's going to be in the midfield, but we have a pretty stacked midfield, especially with the three, Laura, Lucy, and myself coming across it. I think you need to have your best players on the field, and Monham is definitely one of them. So she might, Scotty is a genius too. So I could see him playing her off the halfback if she needs to get involved in the game, playing in the midfield, playing in the forward line. I think she's one that would be difficult to put in a single position because she's so talented and she's young and she's just trying to figure out her body.
Well. And so tall.
It's like a Paddy Cripps almost, like a Paddy Cripps midfielder. She hasn't figured her body out, and I think her role in the AFLW isn't established just yet, but I think within the next 2 years we'll be able to call her a single title. So I actually think she might play across all the lines depending on how she's going, and she's a kid still. Like, she's a kid who last year was, injury riddled and school riddled. So I think she might go across all the lines, which is not good for fantasy people.
But fascinating to hear as well that there could be some runs where she does kind of dabble in different positions. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I had a full question that I wanted to ask you about Cynthia Hamilton, because if you say Montana Ham is monotone and very cool, calm and composed, watching Cynthia play last year, that is a very expressive and up and about player in the forward line. And I know that you mentioned her popping on down to kind of help you at the academy in that article that I referenced earlier. So clearly very invested in the club as well. But this is the kind of last question we ask. We ask it to every one of our interviewees. Who at Sydney do you see making the kind of biggest leap, either from a gameplay importance perspective, from a media perspective? Who's going to see the biggest bump this year?
Oh, as in terms of impact on the field? On the field,
like influence? Who's going to influence the game? Who's going to get the biggest pop in their influence on the game, or who might be someone who's more recognised for what they do and how good they are?
I think Ruby Sargent Wilson. She was injured last year, but she's been training the absolute house down, and she's almost a balance. She's got a bit of Cynthia Hamilton in her, and she's fiery, and if you cross a teammate, the first person behind you will be Ruby. She's got speed, she's got endurance, she just runs the outside like so well, and I think she's got really good skills for someone who operates at such a high pace as well. So I think she'll probably step up her game. She's been training the house down. And I think her name will do her justice because it's a cool name to say. So once you have that name in your mouth, Ruby Sargent Wilson, I think it's one that's going to stick around.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of the kind of tidbits you've given today. And for those who have made it through and listened, Chloe's the first interview that we've done where there has been some prior fantasy knowledge that we've chatted about beforehand. So this has been highly relevant. And thank you so much for jumping on and giving me your time and all the listeners your time as well.
No, thank you. Thank you for all those that made it to the end. And thanks for those that put me in their team.
No, well, I'm sure you'll be relevant again this year and you'll be in many, many sides and we'll be actively following you and the rest of the Sydney team. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Liam. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
Oh, that was a great listen. Such a big name to get for an interview. I mean, she's one of the biggest we've had. That's absolutely amazing. Liam, what was your highlight from that interview?
Aside from the fact that she was just so clued in fantasy-wise and setting aside those fascinating stories she had about playing injured last season, easily, by far and away, the best bit of that interview was hearing her talk about Laura Gardner, because the way she talked about the fact that she came to Sydney not really knowing much about her at all and then being like, she does literally everything. Like, how did I not know about her beforehand? This is ridiculous.
So, I mean, you absolutely loved that interview and that was fascinating to listen to. But we've also actually had a second interview with a Swan. Lauren Szigeti, oh my lord, Szigeti, absolutely nailed that. How was that one?
That was also very, very good, if only because she has a completely unique story in entering the AFLW, and with that unique story comes a unique perspective of actually being on that Sydney roster last year, because as good as Chloe's story was, a lot of it was about her transition to Sydney and what it was like now. Lauren had that first-person leadership group level of insight that truly made it a great interview. And for anyone that's sticking around to listen to our fantasy rundowns, I would highly recommend sticking around to the end of today's episode where you can listen to that chat with Lauren. You'll notice there's a couple of mentions to things raised in that interview throughout the rest of today, but I could not recommend it more highly.
Yeah, we'll chuck that one at the end of this episode, so stick around and listen for that one later. But for now, we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s, the fantasy picks. First up, we've got someone that, we've already spoken a lot about. You're very excited about them. I can see why you wanted to do this episode. Take us through your number one.
It should come as no surprise that it is Laura Gardner, because she is quite simply a VFLW fantasy freak and was completely locked out of midfield time at Geelong, which was something that made all of us a little sad, because what she did at the back end of the middle of the year season in 2022 is truly stupid. She averaged 35 touches and 116 fantasy points in that VFLW season, but at one point she managed 155 points off 49 touches.
Wow.
In a game not against Witches Hats, against Port Melbourne with players from the Richmond list. So a stupidly good fantasy game would be the most touches anyone has ever had in an AFLW game if she did it. She is a freak.
I know you just gave those stats, but averaged 116 fantasy points a game.
Yeah.
That's insane. I mean, like, we get excited when someone gets over 100 in a game. This is the average. That's huge.
Yeah, she is someone with a legit fantasy game. And I've already mentioned it, but Chloe talked her up as being like, she does literally everything. She runs, she tackles hard, she gets the ball. She's this kind of quite like understated personality person, but puts in the hard yards and sounds like she will be in that midfield group and she will be anchoring that midfield group. She's even more value in... So she was already high on my list of players to pick. Even if she was just a midfielder, I think she's too much value. I think she's someone who can average 70 plus and she's going to come into the season priced at 45. But throw in the fact that in AFL Women's Fantasy, so the official platform, she's a forward, bang, she's got to be on my side.
Absolutely. We love seeing players listed as something other than midfield that are going to run through the midfield.
That's always what we look for. And I think Laura Gardner is just ticks all the boxes, has the opportunity, has shown the game, has the pre-seasons under her belt. I just can't think of any reason you wouldn't be picking her.
I just hear in my head your voice, she's in my side.
Yeah, legit.
Oh, golly. So that's a no-brainer. But your number 2 pick here, very interesting. Not only interviewee, I guess, but someone that we've previously talked about maybe being less fantasy relevant after their move over to the Swans. Talk me through your logic for Chloe Molloy.
Yeah, I can talk you through my logic. When we did that episode, we hadn't talked to her.
Yep.
For one, I think it's the fact that since we did that first episode, we now know she's going to spend more time in the midfield. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes across and leads to more fantasy points. But then also coming out of that interview, hearing about how injured she was for the majority of last year, the fact that she rocked up to some games not having touched the ball for that entire week's worth of training is ridiculous. I'm therefore pretty comfortable in saying that she can get above that 68 points because that would still have been the highest scorer for Sydney last year. It's not as though you can't have decent enough scorers in expansion sides. You saw what Tilly Lucas-Robb was able to do. Maddie Prespakis was able to have her best average last season. I think that it's not necessarily a situation where Sydney was incapable of scoring points. I think that the addition of Chloe Molloy, a healthy Chloe Molloy as a mid-forward, can push her average into that 70s range, probably high 70s if you had to ask me what she was going to end up with, which puts her at F2, F1, depending on what you think Chelsea Randall and Karen Paxman and Nina Morrison can do. I think she's well in that group. I think she's undervalued as a result and therefore is someone that's in my side.
Nice. So priced at 68 and you reckon 10 plus potential?
I would say, 10 plus potential. Somewhere between 75 and 80 is where I reckon she ends up for the season.
Yeah, so we've definitely got a bit of a trend here. Number 1 and 2, both listed as forwards, going to be in the midfield. We love to see that. So your number 3, this is a player that we've definitely spoken a lot about in previous seasons before they moved into the Swans. Who's your number 3?
Number 3 is your favourite player, Mel, because you trade them in after round 1 every year, and that's Lucy McEvoy. And that's because I think that she comes in and she probably plays a role that is either mid-forward, which again I think presents upside on her value of her price tag at 52. But it's also the fact that even if she were to play some time in defence, I think that was the thing that Sydney really missed last year was an older head who was a possession-heavy defender. We saw that the most possession-heavy defenders at the Swans last year were Molly Eastman and Ella Heads. Molly was playing her first season of AFLW, even though she had been playing a fair bit of VFLW and actually had been a co-captain at North VFLW team before the season. And then Ella Heads was 18. Now, Lucy will come in and probably be in a position where she can take a bit of a leadership role, kind of play the same role that we saw Karen Peterson play for Carlton last year, which is a midfielder up around the ball, but then drifts back and is really a bit of a marshal across the defensive line. Lucy, not in our interview, because obviously we didn't get a chance to do it, but did a great interview with the Credit to the Girls podcast where she talked about how she has just played across so many different lines through her junior career and then also at Carlton. And it's just because she has such a great understanding for the game that she's just a bit of a fix-it player. I think that no matter where she's asked to fix it at Sydney this year, she probably still presents upside of, 60 to 65 points, which again puts her, and this has been a bit of a consistent theme, is trying to pick players who can push themselves up into the top 5 averaging defenders where we really don't have any locks for above 65 like we have in the past, where in season 6 we had Emma Swanson who played as a full-time mid, we had Beck Webster who played as a full-time midfielder. We don't have that right off the bat by the looks of it this year. So Lucy McEvoy is someone that I'm currently putting in my side because I think she has upside no matter where she plays on the park. Outside as a full-time full forward, which if she does do that in the preseason game is probably the only reason she's not starting in my side.
So far, you've got your 1, 2, and 3 picks from the Swans in your side.
Yep, pretty much.
Nice and Swan heavy, love it.
And just foreshadowing, the 4th one might also be in my side.
Okay, so your number 4 is some advice that we got from the Szigeti interview, which, stay tuned to listen to shortly. Who you got here?
I have the player that Lauren Szigeti says is most likely to improve or make a big impact this season, and that's Ella Heads. If only because I think it points to what Lauren described was all the hallmarks of a second-year breakout. Someone who is really taking a bit more of a leadership role at training, has a beautiful kick, took a lot of kick-outs last year, and will only come into the season priced at 40. So again, just looking for that 10 to 15 points of upside. And we also know that it's a Sydney team where even if they do improve this year, the ball will still spend a decent amount of time in defence. I think that she is someone definitely to consider for your side. Now, I really like Ella Heads, and I say this knowing that there's a distinct possibility that Lucy McEvoy spends more time in defence, which I think pushes down the likelihood that Ella Heads can have enough upside for me to feel comfortable to pick her. But at the moment where Chloe has described Lucy being a mid-forward, I think Ella Heads is a prime target to improve off that half-back line.
Okay, awesome. And to clarify, she is listed as a defender?
Yeah, listed as a defender in both AWF and Fantasy, priced at 41.
Are you continuing the trend? Is your pick number 5 in your team?
No, but I'm going to give you a bit of a narrative on pick 5 because I have ummed and ahed over this a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting one.
Yeah, and it comes down to basically what I've heard from the match sim. But I think there are a number of players you can pick here, but none that I'm going to say I'm very confident on. Originally, I was considering going Montana Ham, but the way that both Chloe and Lauren describe what she looked like, it's not so much that she doesn't look like she's going to be a gun at some point. It's more that it does not sound like she's going to have a consistent role this year. It sounds like she could be dropped behind the ball, put in front of the ball, run through the midfield, and that's what led to some of her lumpy scoring last year as well.
Yeah.
If we got word she was going to be guaranteed a position in the midfield, I think she would be much higher on this list because I think she has the most potential of any draftee from last year, if only because of her physique.
So to clarify, we actually still haven't heard the name of your number 5.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk
Not
about
Montana Ham.
Okay, in fairness, I thought you would take Montana Ham given she wasn't listed here as the Mel special. So I was like, well, I have to give some narrative on Monty Ham. The player that I have picked is Sophia Hurley. So if Montana Ham was pick 1 last year, Sophia Hurley was pick 5 for Sydney. So that was Sydney's second pick. She's a gun outside midfielder. She was the best and fairest for the Sandringham Dragons in underage footy in her final year there. She came in and didn't necessarily come out all guns blazing. She'll only come into the year priced at 44 in both formats as a midfielder. The reason why she's in here at number 5 is that there have been multiple match reports, both written and then also listening to Gemma Bastiani talk about her. Apparently she was the best player on the ground when she played. Now, it's probably just a name that we're going to keep an eye on because we really don't know that much about her, and I think she fits a really awkward price bracket in the midfield. But I also think there's very much a world where she does become that explosive midfielder, that extra burst of speed that I think Sydney missed last year.
Yes. So starting a bit of the mid-price madness there with a midfielder priced at 44.
Yes, okay, Mel, I will throw to you. Who do you have as your 44-priced, mid-priced madness midfielder Mel special?
Yeah, so I'm kind of taking a similar vein with my Mel special. I'm going for someone that's quite close to your heart, I imagine, purely because your weekly articles you wrote last year were named after her. This is Amy Whelan from Whelan and Dealan. I could see your face. You were like, where is this going?
Well, in fairness, Jono also did a majority of the writing for those articles, so I was really feeling bad for the Jono erasure again.
Okay, shout out to Jono for his fantastic article name. I'm going with Whelan and Dealan, Amy Whelan, midfielder, priced at 46. The reason I reckon that she's going to be great, and I know that this is a mid-price madness take here, so, it's a special for a reason, but she only played 3 games last season, so she's coming in with a discount. For everyone else, I'm going with the official game prices here, but for everyone else that's got a price stat at 46, their dollar value is somewhere around 650K. She's coming in at 550K. So obvious underpricing there.
Bit of value there already.
Yeah. She is the second highest priced at Sydney mid. So she's coming in as Sydney's second highest priced at mid. But the reason I think she's particularly exciting is when she did play, of which there were only 3 games from last season, she had 53, 83 and 58 CBAs. So she was definitely in amongst it. And I'm actually not too sure why she didn't play the other games of those 7. I assume it was just a naming thing. But if she's named in round 1, she's already underpriced and she's well up there in the CBAs, taking the majority of them on the games that she is playing. Great potential. What I haven't really considered for is how this fits in with some of the team shuffles in the midfield. But I think that the fact that she is 100,000K cheaper in the official game than anyone else gives you, if you see her named, good price making potential there.
Yeah, I think you've kind of summed up why I think she's a risky pick, because I believe that there will be better midfielders that roll through this year, but I also think that she's one player that can average enough tackles at the very least to set a decent floor to her scoring, because she averaged 5 a game last year. She did miss a bunch of games through injury. I think it might be one that she is a sideways or upgrade target from a rookie throughout the year if we do see an indication that she's a permanent midfielder, because I do like that tackle game. I really think that for those mid-price players, you want to see a consistent basement.
Way to make points, yeah.
And that's also just not going to kill you week to week. Like, it's not like she's going to serve up at 20. Like, that's probably the worst you can do if you average 5 tackles. Like, that's a pretty good place to start. So I think that's why I think this is a real special. This is really going deep in the bag, but there are definitely reasons why it's a name you should remember when it comes to upgrade/sideways season. But again, this is one where we're definitely going to have to trust our eyes on roll.
I'm going to slap a will watch and wait on that one and call it a day for my special. So thank you, everyone, for listening to our clubs and days for the Sydney Swans. We've got only 2 teams left, which is exciting, getting towards the end of them. Have a look at our Instagram for our best 21 for the Swans, and we will be chucking up our next couple of episodes in the next few days before we get onto some other exciting pre-season content. As always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at FreeKickWPod. Where can they find you, Liam?
They can find me in a hospital bed recovering from surgery, and then they can also find me on Twitter at Liam AFLW Fantasy.
Oh, I imagine you're going to have nothing better to do when you're laying in your hospital bed than tweet about some AFLW stuff, so I'm sure they can read all of your great content there.
For sure.
And I'm on Insta as HiMLD. So we will chat to you all later.
And don't forget to listen to the interview. Yes, stay for the rest of the interview with Lauren Szigeti.
Yes, enjoy that. Bye.
See ya. G'day everyone, welcome to this, a very special bonus second interview for today's Sydney Clubs in Days episode. And I am joined by cult hero from season 7, Lauren Szigeti. Lauren, how are you going? And thank you so much for jumping on.
I'm good, Liam. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So I know that a lot of our listeners are aware of kind of your meteoric rise coming in as a rookie last year and jumping straight into midfield as a captain as well. That's a pretty meteoric rise given you've been playing at Hawthorn VFLW the season prior. What was that experience like from you? What was the jump?
Yeah, it was definitely pretty surreal. I mean, whilst I was playing at Hawks and even playing at Darren VFL before that, all I wanted was to crack AFLW. And so it was, I guess, a huge relief when I finally did. He gave me the call and said he wanted to offer me a contract with the Swans. But yeah, ending up being captain was definitely something way above my expectations of what I guess expected of me coming into that year. So it was hugely surreal. But I was, very lucky, very grateful to have that position. I think it's something bigger than, like, even just being involved in the inaugural team. It's something much bigger than any of us as individuals, and we probably won't realise how special it was to be a part of it, let alone being one of the co-captains until we're finished playing footy, I think, because it's such a historic thing. But it was, quite surreal.
It's historic, but were you given any indication when they were like, look, we want you to come on board? I'm sure that would have been a high enough moment as is, given you'd been, playing VFLW for quite a number of years. Did they mention, like, we want your leadership group, captain? Was there anything like that? Or was it just like, we want you to come down, we want you to play midfield? That was it?
Yeah, no, it was just fully
here's your contract, like we want you on the team. And then within the team we had the 5 other girls in our leadership group who were all quite experienced, have played a few years of AFLW, and I think it was kind of almost expected that they would kind of form that group because they were the most experienced players in our team. And so it definitely wasn't expected that I would end up in there, and there wasn't any conversations early on. But I just kind of went about my footy how I always do. And I guess I have high expectations and standards for myself, and I probably lead more by doing things rather than saying things. And so I guess people just caught on to that, and I ended up in there. But yeah, I was also so lucky to be in the group with those 5 girls, the others in Woody, Lisa, Priv, Mads and Brooke, because I learned so much from being not only teammates with them, but in the leadership group with them. So very cool.
And I don't think it'd be a surprise to say that the kind of industrious inside midfielder who loves a tackle probably is a lead by example kind of leader, put your nose over the ball. So I think that that's certainly not a surprise to hear. I think kind of moving along to that, I obviously can't speak to having been inside the playing group, but being inside an expansion club that struggled to didn't get a win last year, obviously, and we've had a chat with Chloe Molloy, so we're kind of across the fact that the coaching staff didn't set expectations last season. But for you, having played in that team last year, what was the coaching staff like in terms of dealing with week-to-week results versus like a bigger plan for the roster 2, 3, 5 years down the track?
Yeah, I think Scotty and the rest of the staffing group we were in it for the long haul. We weren't there to win the premiership in the first year. We were there to build a culture and to build a team, and to start creating a legacy that's going to last years down the track when none of us are playing anymore. The girls that come in are going to just slide into the culture that we've created. And I think that was the biggest thing last year, creating that. And there definitely was an understanding that we were so inexperienced compared to the other teams. And there wasn't an expectation to win heaps of games to make finals to win the premiership. It was the expectation to just keep getting better every day and taking as many learnings as we could out of each game. And there was we highlighted the fact a lot that if we won or lost each game, we'd review it exactly the same, and that it really did feel like we did that. Even though it was a loss every game, we still reviewed it the same way as what we would if it was a win, took the learnings out of it, and went into the next game with a genuine belief that we could win it, which I think is something really special. Even going into round 10, we still felt that we could win the game. And I think that's off the back of the way that the coaching staff went about it. Just didn't lose their cool and tell us that everything was no good. We just, kept our heads in and focused on our own internal KPIs that we wanted to focus on. And throughout the season, everything got better, which was, we almost would have been nice to have a few extra rounds, I think, because it was coming.
Definitely looked like you guys were like rounding into form. And I think as well, at least externally, I've always kind of envied the kind of idea of the Bloods culture and how that has kind of been fostered, at least through the men's program. And it looks like there's been a concerted effort in the AFLW squad to kind of engender that same idea. Surely, if you can lean on that and foster that, that probably actually is helpful for an expansion club. Kind of, it can help to temper expectations, but then also say, like, we know how to do this, we know this works.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been such a focus on the culture side of things, and we did put a real focus on setting really high standards and expectations for ourselves, even through the first year. Maybe if we were kind of overshooting with those expectations or standards, we still had them in place and really wanted to hit those and set a good standard for the years to come. And I think that having the club being so immersed in the importance of culture, and the boys have shown over the past 20 years how important and how, like, it's just the cornerstone of a club to have a good culture. So especially being immersed in that Bloods culture, it's going to hold us in good stead for the years to come.
Moving along to something else I wanted to chat about. You had a pretty tumultuous off-season, having had what looked like some pretty serious neck surgery. What was that process like? And then kind of how is your recovery going? It sounds like, from what I can read online, you're back at training, but I can't imagine that was an easy few months.
Yeah, it was a pretty difficult few months. I have returned to full training as of the past month or so. But yeah, I had to get a dissectomy and fusion on my cervical spine. I guess we found it at the end of last season. And so when met with the surgeon, and he said, like, if you want to keep playing footy, you probably got to get this surgery. And so in December, went in and got it done because we knew it was going to be quite a long recovery, like minimum 6 months. So I guess it's the only time that the long AFLW off season is a good thing because got it done, and then I got to be missed, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of proper pre-season, and I was back in with the girls. So yeah, the recovery process was long though. I had to wear a soft collar for 4 weeks, and then another 2 months after that when I was in the gym, and just really starting back from square one in the gym with the loading through my spine and the running and things like that. But I took a lot of learnings out of that for sure. And the biggest one was definitely just being happy to be out there playing footy, because there was a real possibility that I wasn't going to be able to do that if I didn't decide to surgery or if it didn't work. Because before that I had, like, my whole arm was numb and I didn't have any strength in my left arm, and so I wouldn't be playing too good footy with that. So happy that I got it done. The recovery's going well, and I'm back.
Yeah, geez, that's a pretty confronting situation to have to go with. I wouldn't want to have to go through that myself personally. So I admire the kind of capacity to come back from that. And I don't know, I've had myself back injury. I've put stress fractures in my back. It's not the same as a spinal fusion, but it does make you realise how much day to day you actually rely on not thinking about how straight and healthy your back is and how your neck's going and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. Lots of learnings in terms of posture.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, yeah. Don't. I don't feel like I really want to go into the details there. I feel like I'm going to get ripped.
Don't rupture a disc.
Well, moving on to kind of the next things I want to talk about. You were a kind of a core part of that inside centre bounce midfield group last year, but I don't know if you're aware, but Sydney rolled more than anyone else, any other team, of just a sheer volume of players through last year. How is that kind of inside midfield group looking this year, particularly given you've added Laura Gardner, who sounds like she's come across to be a midfielder after struggling to break into a stupidly talented group at Geelong, and then also mid-forwards in Chloe Molloy and Lucy McEvoy, who by the sounds of it will also roll through. How is that midfield group shaping up kind of this off-season?
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's so exciting having the additions of those three who just bring so much experience, and the way that they train, the standard and the intensity that they train at, it brings everyone else up with them, which is, we're so lucky to have them. And, we definitely rolled a few through the mids last year. I think it was another side of just knowing that it was a year of learning and just figuring out who plays best where and what combinations work best. And so it's probably shaping up a bit differently this year, but still plenty of people. The midfield group is always the biggest group, so it's got plenty of people rolling through. And I guess now it's just finding what that best combination will be, and probably kind of sticking more with it rather than throwing the whole team through the mids. But everyone's kind of got their, even through the mids, everyone's got their second or even third position that they can play. So just right now, all we're doing is trying to find what combination across the whole field works best. Moving between the lines, but probably going to be more solidified this year, which will be nice.
Because for context, we did one of our first interviews last year was with Brendan Tarrant, who we knew as a key defender from Melbourne. One of the first things she says is, "Oh yeah, no, they want me as an inside midfielder," and that was in the pre-season. So we got an insight pretty early that things might be a little different at Sydney for season 7. Interesting to see then kind of what that final midfield group will shape up like, because setting aside that kind of super talented trio that you've brought in kind of with experience and a sheer volume of possessions and games, you've also got some uber talented high draft picks that rolled through last year in Montana Ham and Cynthia Hamilton, who at times last year just lit up quarters with either their speed or their height, strength. How do you think they will fit in this year? We've heard from Chloe that Montana might be a little bit behind the ball at times. Cynthia's obviously an extremely kind of like impactful forward, but then also had some great minutes in the midfield.
Yeah. Both of them are just such exciting players to watch. I guess they've almost got a bit of Dustin Martin about them when they want to turn it on. They just run through a pack, run through anyone and kick a goal. So they're so exciting to have on our team. But yeah, I think because of that, the talent that we've picked up through the midfield, it gives us the opportunity to really utilise key down forward or Mon down forward or down back, and use the running ability that Mon has and the big marking and goal kicking ability that she has. We don't have to rely on them winning contests and clearances through the midfield. So that's super exciting for us. I think both of them are going to definitely improve on the season they had last year. Chi obviously winning our club champion. She had an awesome year. But Mon was doing year 12 at the same time. So she's got, crazy. So I think now she lives up here. She's settled. I think she's set for a really big year too, which is super exciting.
Yeah, we love to see that. Like what Montana Ham was doing game 1, looking like, to be honest, like bombed. Like that's this a behemoth who just makes it look at all too easy at times. And
too easy.
I did mention this with Chloe, but she also probably had the hardest role in any one game this year when it looked like she tried to tag Jazz Garner for a full 4 quarters, and that is probably the hardest role in the league, like bar none, particularly last season with the impact that she had. So it'd be fascinating to see where the pair of them end up. Kind of the electric ability of Cynthia just kind of blew us away at points. And I remember a couple of times going, wow, like I don't know if this person can be stopped once the ball is in their hand. So we're very excited and interesting as well that it won't be that they're relied on in the midfield, but it sounds like they'll be used as the change of pace, electric ability kind of this season.
Definitely, that impact player that, that if they're around the ball, they'll probably get their hands on it. So good assets to have, that's for sure.
Leading right on to assets to have, there's 3 players that I want to talk about because we really don't know much about them. And that's the 3 rookies you guys picked up from Ireland. You've got Paris McCarthy, Jennifer Higgins, and Julie O'Sullivan. There's really not a whole lot out there at the moment about what the club expects of them this year. Are you able to give us kind of any insight on what's kind of going on internally?
I guess because they haven't played AFL before, they're kind of getting thrown through all the positions and just seeing what matches with their own strengths and their abilities, because a lot of them, I guess, don't even know for sure what their strengths are yet. So it's kind of finding the position that works well for them. I mean, they're all incredible athletes, incredible runners, as you'd expect, and just such hard workers, like in at the club all the time, practicing their kicking, watching vision. So it's been awesome to have them there because it kind of lifts the rest of us up.
And can you give us any indication on any one of them, what position you expect them to play? And if you're like, look, that we don't even know internally, that's totally fine.
Probably, I guess, having the running ability. I know with Julie, she's just like pressure, insane amount of pressure through our running ability and just her competitiveness. So I think she's been training down with the backs recently. But as I said, they moved around, so could change depending on performance, depending on injury. But I think she's been settled down there for the past couple of weeks, which has been really good to see. I think she works well down there. But yeah, they're all just so ready to go wherever the team needs them as well, which is obviously having no pride. They don't know what their favourite position is. They don't know where they want to play. So
they're not going to turn
good
their
asset
nose
to have.
up when they're like,
Yeah.
can you just go trading down with the halfbacks today?
Yeah.
No midfield time. No head down. Oh, yeah, fine. Okay, I wanted to play football. Fine. That's going to be
Exactly.
That's going to be fascinating to watch.
For sure. I think they're being a bit naive about it. It's just, it's good for them and it's good for everyone else as well, because they're happy to just go out and do their thing wherever they play.
Yeah. And that infectious kind of obsession with sport is always an asset to have at any level of sport, kind of anywhere. Well,
absolutely.
Unfortunately, we've now come to the last question on my question list, and it's something that we ask every player that we have on for an interview, and that is, who do you think at Sydney is going to most substantially improve their game in 2023? Outside of yourself, obviously, kind of coming in an extra year of experience after a rookie season as a midfielder.
I think probably Ella Heads. She had a good year last year, but I think she's just been working so hard, and every part of her game has improved, and the way that she trains is she lifts everyone up around her. And she's really come a long way in her leadership as well, especially through the back line. And being so young, I think she's got a big year ahead of her, which is going to be super exciting.
Very interesting, because she was someone that we didn't kind of expect to have that kind of key kick-out role last year. So fascinating to see that that's your pick, because, the kind of potential was definitely there, and she looked like she had a pretty elite kick too.
Yep. Yeah. Can't wait to see it in action again.
Well, you can join the club then, because we're all very excited to see how Sydney go this year, and there's a lot of fantasy-relevant names to come. Unfortunately, that's the end of our interview today, but Lauren, thank you so much for coming on. Really a wealth of knowledge for this upcoming season.
No worries. Thank you, Liam. Thanks for having me.